Thank you for joining us today. And we have been praying for this time, and we are very excited about what Jessica will teach us and talk to us about today. Will bless each of our lives, our work, our businesses, our nonprofits and organizations. And so thank you very much. Before we dive into the meat of today, I want to take just a moment for anyone on the call who may not know about Ardent Mentoring and tell you a little bit about us. Ardent Mentoring matches impact-driven entrepreneurs and enterprises with faith-driven mentors who have the specific expertises to help them scale their success and multiply their impact by providing what we like to call executive subject matter expertise mentoring. And this type of mentoring helps you solve problems, take advantage of opportunities, drive growth when you're within your organization, develop new talents and learning to help you lead your organizations, all geared towards transforming lives through the work that the entrepreneurs and enterprises we serve do. And we do everything, all of this mentoring and everything we do with a whole person approach that helps enterprises multiply their impact by also integrating faith and family and identity and work-life balance into what we like to call the pursuit of sustainable success. Success not only in the work that we're doing, but also in the lives that we're living, so that we don't end up sacrificing something more valuable to us and more valuable to God in our pursuit of success in the work that we're doing. And today's webinar is very much in line with our whole person approach. Today, we are going to hear all about what it takes to stay mission true as we seek to scale. And how do we handle that up and down, emotional, sometimes roller coaster cost of preserving over the long haul, of seeing our mission and even our visions come to be realities in this world. And so I'm very excited to welcome Jessica to the call. Jessica Jackley is the co-founder of Kiva. You may have invested in Kiva before. It was the world's first peer-to-peer micro lending platform. I remember 15, 20 years ago, making my first investment into Kiva. We gave a cow to a village, my small group did, and it was just so cool to see how that resource was used and see that money come back and see us be able to lend it out again. Recently, Jessica also founded Untapped Capital, which is an early stage venture firm that invests in overlooked entrepreneurs. I love Jessica's heart to help millions of people around the world access opportunity and capital, reshape the way the world thinks about giving, entrepreneurship, social impact, and beyond everything Jessica has done for others, she's also an author, an educator, and a mother, and she is passionate about equipping leaders to pursue ventures that align with both purpose and profit. And I love when those two words are put together, purpose and profit. Jessica, I hope I've done a good job introducing you. I would like to turn over the floor to you. We are incredibly excited to learn from you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Ryan and team. I'm grateful to be here. It's wonderful to see all of your faces. The only bummer here is I feel like I have to keep pushing the arrow. It's amazing there's so many folks here, but I can't see all of you at once. But I'll flip through and try to make pixelated eye contact as much as I can. I'm going to share my screen and dive right in. All right. So much ground to cover in such a short window of time. So here we go. If you meet me and get to talk to me for more than 30 seconds, I will instantly tell you about the most important thing in my life, which is my family. And so it's indulgent, but I'm just going to tell you about them real quick so you know where I'm coming from. I have 4 kids. This is a little bit of an old picture, but it's a funny one. But here's how they look today. This is after church at Easter. I have Asa next to me, who is 10. I have identical boys. They're not really identical, though. I beg to differ that that's even a thing. They're very similar, same genetics, but my goodness. Cyrus and Jasper, that's my husband Reza, and my daughter Soraya, who's 5. And they're my world. Of course, I've really packed this with kid pictures. Let me get through them. Cyrus, Jasper, Asa, Soraya. We're a family, we're an interfaith family. And so we go to church on Sundays and we do a ton of service after our favorite thing to do. It's a sort of easy go-to. You just show up anytime you can, is to work with Food on Foot, where we put our shared values into action by distributing different supplies and resources to unhoused folks in Hollywood, somewhat near where we live. We're sort of on the east side for anyone who knows LA. um, but it's something that really matters to us. And it's something that, it came up for me and I wanted to include it in this because for us as a family, as I was thinking about ritual and culture building, for us, showing up regularly, not just to worship and to fill up ourselves, but to give back in a very regular way has been essential. In terms of our own expression of what we believe and what we think it's important to do, how you show up with your values in the world and how we express our own mission as a family, if you will. These are my other kids. This is just a handful of shots from teaching at USC. I'm in my office right now. I teach right at 10 Pacific time, which is why I'm going to apologize in advance, but I have a hard stop at 9:55. But I've taught on and off over about a decade. And then last year, after 24 years of being only a founder, I started teaching full time. And so, of course, I have lots of side projects brewing, but it's wonderful and strange to be in academia. But that's my day to day, starting over the last year. So I want to start with this story because I kept thinking, I could dive right into like, here are my 4 ideas about how to stay mission true as you scale. But I wanted to start back and talk to you about the story of Kiva. But I also wanted to start back a little further than that and talk to you about what I feel are the very beginnings of any entrepreneurial venture, of these new ideas that we have and we want to bring to life in the world. So I'm sure I'm talking to many parents in the room. For me, my toddler, well, she's 5 now. She's a big girl, kindergarten. But a few years ago, Soraya did this thing that many toddlers do. My boys did it too, where they really love repetition. It's how they learn. It's what they enjoy. And so bedtime stories became one thing and one thing only. Like each book at a time was on repeat for quite a while. Oh, one of them, this bear hunt book, I don't know how many are familiar with it, but basically, spoiler, the family goes on a bear hunt. They walk through all these scenes. Let's say there's like 5 scenes. They walk through a field of grass and there's sound effects, swishy swashy. They walk through the river. They walk through mud. They walk through the forest. They go through a snowstorm. Just go with me. And then they get to the bear and then shocker, it's terrifying. So they turn around and run back through all the scenes in reverse. And Soraya loved this so much that not only would we read it multiple times, but when I finally could pry the book out of her hands and put it down, she'd want me to recite the book verbatim as we fell asleep, which I could do because I read it so many times. For my own sanity, at some point, as I was reciting this until she and I fell asleep, at some point, I remember I thought, well, it'd be fun. I'll see if she's still listening. She was 2. She was lying on my chest. And I said, instead of the same sound effect as they swished through the grass or whatever, or maybe it was the river, I mixed it up and I changed something. I said, and the sound effect is, and I mixed it up. And she had been almost asleep. But to my surprise, she pushed herself up on my chest and looked at me in the dark and said, Mama, what if? And then she kept going. And this little change, the tiniest detail of change, sent the whole story off in a different direction. I say this because it sounds like a small moment, but of course we find a lot of meaning. We can find a lot of meaning in small moments if we're paying attention and if we could have the luxury of spending time to reflect on them. And as the story went off in a new direction and she was so excited, I had to calm her down again and we fell asleep. But as I was falling asleep that night, I realized how essential it is, how beautiful it was for her to see and understand that she can change the story with a tiny question, a what if question. What if we do this? What if this character that didn't have a voice has a voice? What if we turn left instead of right? What if the bears aren't scary and they're friends? And then we have dinner together and we play all our favorite games. All these tiny what if questions can have a giant effect on the trajectory of the story as it unfolds. And to me, this is what I believe, and this is what I teach my students about. I think being able to stop and question the stories on repeat that we all have, that we all are told, that we all sometimes subconsciously just take in and assume to be true, assume to be just the way the story goes. The more we can question those stories on repeat, the more we can look for opportunities to shift small things that can have a very big impact. I think the more beautiful things happen and the more interesting, innovative, entrepreneurial things we can build in the world. So for me, it's always begun with the what if questions. Way back, this is yeah, this is a glimpse into like how I thought about business when I was a kid. I thought business way back. The story on repeat that I had about business and certainly entrepreneurship was very negative. I thought business was about greed and selfishness. I thought it was about tricking people into giving you their money for stuff they didn't even really need. I only saw evil and bad and things that I didn't want to be a part of. You know, there's a lot of villains that happen to be very rich in stories. There's what, Lex Luthor, there's Scrooge McDuck. I remember that was my first exposure to the Scrooge world. But I remember thinking, okay, if that's business, then what's the opposite? If those are the takers in the world, and by the way, my story does change. We'll get there. But if those are the takers, I thought as a kid, who are the givers? I want to be a part of their world. And of course, there's some really amazing givers in the world. There's some really I think sometimes over glorified stories of giving, but there are some beautiful examples, although it's tricky to know exactly how to have a career path that leads to Mother Teresa status. But I knew that that's what I wanted to try to do. And so in my very simple understanding of the world, I thought, oh, well, businesses, not good, bad guys. What's the opposite? Non-business, nonprofits, right? So I thought nonprofits, NGOs, that's where I want to go. That's what I want to be a part of. And as I looked around, my only exposure to them, I don't know if this like is a visceral feeling for anyone, but I mean, man, I grew up watching Sally Struthers on TV all the time, and God bless her, really changed a lot for me and for lots of people. But the way that I interacted with NGOs or nonprofits was often through my own church experiences and through things like this, some well-crafted, well-intentioned marketing material from NGOs and nonprofits that somewhere along the way had decided that the story on repeat for them was going to be one of urgency, suffering, sadness, um, truthfully, trying to get a reaction, I think, out of a lot of would-be donors, whether they were very high net worth donors or myself, low net worth, lower middle class American donors, but still privileged enough to, be watching TV and have a few dollars to give. But I think the cycle that a lot of these organizations followed, at least for me, was bent on making the listener feel enough, maybe guilt, maybe even shame about relative privilege and absolute privilege to act, right? To whip out your wallet and give and to call the 1-800 number. And, for the cost of a cup of coffee, if you actually thought it was possibly maybe true, you could change someone's life, why wouldn't you do it? So this is what I did. I gathered my allowance. I did the UNICEF thing. I did Halloween. Like I was told the thing I could give, the best thing I could give was my money. I didn't have a lot, but I thought, okay, I guess that's what we do. And I remember feeling this yearning for a connection, this yearning for interaction, but all I was offered by most organizations was a transaction. And truthfully, it didn't feel very good. But that's what I thought I was supposed to do. That was the role in this broader story that I was offered to play. So I was a little frustrated, and sadly, more importantly, my heart started to harden. I thought because the stories were so similar, time after time after time, the poster children, the stats, again, of well-intentioned, amazing organizations, I just felt like I'd heard it all before. That story got disrupted though after college. So I'd studied not business, all the things that are not business. I'd studied philosophy and poetry, political science, and I flung myself out to California. I grew up in Pennsylvania, and I flung myself out to have an adventure. I thought I'd be there for a few months. Here we are, 25 years later. But I moved to the Bay Area and I walked around Stanford's campus. For anyone who knows that particular area, Sand Hill Road is where a lot of the VC firms are, right? So I happened to live in one of the 6 houses or so between the VC firms and the apartment buildings that are on Sand Hill Road. And if you cross the street, you're on campus. So I walked across the street with my paper resumes and just started walking into buildings, handing it out and saying, I need a job. I have a philosophy degree. Don't you want to hire me? Anyway, I ended up getting a temporary position for somebody on medical leave. It was an admin role, pure, front desk, greeting people as they walked in to the Stanford Graduate School of Business. And I'll tell you what, I was afraid for my soul. I thought, here I am in the lion's den. I'm with people who are business people. And my goodness, gang leaders, like who's starting the businesses, entrepreneurs, they're the worst. They're like making more of this thing in the world that's bad. And so I honestly went in and felt, well, this is a side note, but just to absolutely hammer this point home, I was so worried about like being in this place. And I thought, well, am I doing some work in the world in a place that's bad and that's counteractive to what I believe and what I want to do? And so I ended up getting a second job. I was in this lovely Christian nonprofit called New Creation Home. I was the house mom in a home for teen moms. And so by day, I would go to work and like earn a paycheck. By night, I would go home, make dinner for all the girls and the kids and the babies, make sure everyone did their homework, get them all, make sure they lights off. And that's where I lived. So I would stay there. I would get up in the morning, get everyone off to school or daycare. Uh, I remember I had this little Honda Civic and I had so many car seats in it. People were like, "What? Who are you?" I was young and not married and just I had a lot of stickers on the inside of the window. I have that now as a mom, but that was my life. I was trying to do what I thought was right and also earn a living, and it was confusing. But I learned just a few weeks into this job at the Stanford Graduate School of Business. I happened to be in this center. I didn't know what it was about exactly, but it was called the Center for Social Innovation. And it just so happened to be a place where every day people were walking in and thinking about doing great things in the world, being givers, serving, solving problems, alleviating suffering, but using business skills and entrepreneurial thinking. And I realized a few weeks in, that I'd kind of found my people. Like these people were getting things done and had huge hearts and cared about the things that I did. They just happened to be thinking about it in a way that I didn't know was a thing. So I ended up staying. My job changed and evolved. The person on medical leave came back. I got a different job in the same center doing event planning. And for a while, I felt like I was in the center of all this great stuff, all this learning. I crashed classes. I went to professors' office hours. This is one of the reasons I feel like I have to say yes to every office hour all the time and pay it forward. But even when I wasn't a student, I went in and asked, can you, there's no students in line outside your door. Can you explain pricing to me? I don't get it. So I kind of had a few years of just absorbing a lot of the ideas and certainly the community. I felt rooted in that community. But then I felt there was one day I stayed late after work because it was 3 years in and it was the fall of '03. And there was this gentleman named Dr. Muhammad Yunus coming to speak. And I didn't really understand what he was about. I remember the little email blast that went out to campus, to students and faculty and staffers like me, said, banker to the poor, coming to campus. And I thought, what? That sounds suspicious. And I went and sat in this like 50-seater classroom and sat near the door, like with my arms crossed, ready to be skeptical. And of course, it was one of these moments where the way he talked about microfinance, which I didn't know was a thing, tiny amount of capital in the right hands at the right time with the right training can be a trajectory shifter. So I learned about microfinance. Wow. I learned that his story started in a really accessible and interesting way where he had been actually an academic, but wanted to really work with people in community. And so he sort of went to the other side of town in Chittagong in Bangladesh and sat with people who were stuck in a cycle of poverty. And he explained it in such a simple and accessible way that even my, philosophy, poetry major brain at that time could understand. The women woke up every day, borrowed a tiny bit of money, often like $2, $3 from a local money lender. They would buy the product they needed, raw materials to do beadwork or make baskets. They sold their baskets at a profit, but no matter how hard they worked, no matter how well they did, they were always, at the end of the day, stuck because they owed more than they would make back to the moneylender. But there was nothing else offered to them. There was nowhere else to go. Banks wouldn't lend to them. So this was what they could do. And I remember thinking, the way he described it, he just sat there and listened to their stories. And as he did, he sort of he trusted the insights, the aha moment that he had as he was listening, and the way it's not perfect, and it's not a silver bullet, but the way to fast forward through his story, he responded is by basically reaching into his pocket and lending a little over $20 to this whole village, not at ridiculous interest rates. Like the money lenders would charge 300 to 3,000%. And I'm not misspeaking. I've had my coffee today. Lot of interest charged, and he would charge very little, if anything. And they, of course, were able to like dig themselves out of poverty, break that cycle, and slowly change their lives, slowly lift themselves up, and their families' lives improved. And so this was just such an incredible story. And the big thing that I heard was, wait, this guy started by being a great listener. I could do that. Anyway, third, most important. So microfinance, wow. Being a great listener is where it all begins. Wow. And then third, he talked about people who were stuck in poverty, super socioeconomically disadvantaged, didn't have access to this resource that I had had access to my whole life, loan options, and financial services. And he talked about them as smart, strong, hardworking people that just hadn't been given opportunity, haven't been given hadn't been given financial inclusion. And for some reason, the way he talked about it was so dignified. It was not a pitch for money. It was just explaining their lives. And it broke something in me in a good way. It totally disrupted that story on repeat that I had heard from the well-intentioned nonprofits growing up. I didn't feel sad, guilty, shameful. I didn't feel like it was a new story for me. And so I was so inspired by this that I quit my job at Stanford and I begged my way into an unpaid internship in East Africa. And I lived there for a few months, interviewing people that had received $100, not even loans, to be honest with you, just grants. But that was close enough for me, the non-business thinker at that time. I thought, well, it's great. I'll just learn about the money going one way. I'll figure out how it comes back part later. It'll be great. And it was great. I got to live every day. I would interview a handful of families. I went to different villages every few days. And over time, I interviewed hundreds of entrepreneurial people who had received $100. And I saw how that had, again, disrupted their story. It changed the trajectory for them. It just turned the page and opened a whole new chapter for their lives. And it was so moving, so incredible that at that point, I, along with my co-founder, Matt, started to ask these very basic what if questions. What if, super simple. What if we stayed in touch with these new friends? We noticed that while most of the villages, I was the one there, he was back in San Francisco, but I noticed that most of the villages had no electricity, no running water. But every few villages, there was a guy who would like have a bicycle and get to a trading center or a small town and be able to like charge a phone or get online. So there was very limited connectivity through individuals that could make the trip. So what if we stayed in touch? That'd be interesting. What if, since nobody asked me for a handout, not one person, but they were very interested in the next level of financing for their small ventures, their small micro enterprises, what if this loan funding that all these people needed, what if we could ask our friends and family and help them out? I didn't have the money myself. And by the way, this was way back in 2004. Crowdfunding wasn't a word that anybody was using. So it's funny to think back. We had to explain it long form. We're like, okay, what if lots of people had a little bit of money, but they put it all together and it was enough? So anyway, we started to ask these basic questions that led to the launch of a pilot round for Kiva. This is actually, I should get a screenshot of like day one, but we put a handful of entrepreneurs, 7 to be exact, on a little website, took their picture, told their story, said, here's Moses, he's a goat herder, he needs $300. Here's Justice. She is a farmer. She needs $500. In total, 7 entrepreneurs, $3,000. And we said, look, we want to lend this to them at 0% interest. And over time, if they repay, we think they will, we'll send you the money back. We spammed our friends and family. We had the very basics in place, not even payment processing, to be honest with you. I remember my grandma handed me a 20. We used our personal bank account. We wired it over Uganda. This was nothing sophisticated, to be clear, but it was enough to start. And after that first round, 6 months later, that first round came back and we said, I think this kind of worked, right? We took the word beta off of the site and I wrote a press release and put it on our own little personal blog on the site in October of 2005. And shockingly, nothing happened, at least not for a week or two. But around the 3rd week of October in 2005, 300 blogs somehow in a matter of a few days wrote about Kiva, including 2 of the 3 biggest in the world. So suddenly, onslaught of traffic and interest. And we just had our one buddy in Uganda who was walking around taking pictures of our friends. So talk about scale. That happened with Kiva in a way that we could have never anticipated. And as a somewhat accidental entrepreneur, I looking back was really not ready for, but I wonder if any entrepreneur ever is. We're all sort of making it up as we go every day with as much preparation as we can get. But so the first Pilot round of loans was $3,000. The first year we cleared 500,000 in loans. The next year it was around 15 million, the next 40, the next 100 something. Kiva's closing in on $3 billion. It's 20 years later, but it's continued to grow. And at one point, it was in more countries when you look at lenders and borrowers. I remember it was in more countries than the UN recognized, which was really funny. So it's all over, and it's been such a gift to watch this little idea, this manifestation of a few, answers to some what if questions grow and grow and grow. So let's get to the point of what we're talking about today. So as I look back at that journey, and I haven't been full-time at Kiva for quite a number of years, a decade. I've done a lot of other things. As Ryan mentioned, I started a venture firm. I started a company 5 years ago providing volunteer activities for families to do at home during COVID. We had a subscription-based sort of situation there. Every month for 12 months, you'd get a new box, partnered with a new nonprofit, a new set of learning materials and action impact projects you could do at home. Anyway, yes, I wrote a book. I teach. I've gotten to do a lot of wonderful things. I feel like I've had grand adventures. But as I look back, if I just focus on the Kiva story, it would take too long to tell you all the stories of all the things. These are the 4 pieces that really allowed Kiva to stay who it was. I'm going to say the word who, but for Kiva to really stay focused on the things that mattered for that group of people, for that founding team, and for that organization as it's grown over time. And so I'm going to unpack very quick stories on each of these, and then let's dive into Q&A. So conviction, commitment, connection, and culture. And I didn't try to make these all C's at first. It just happened, but I like it. Okay. First, conviction. We have, it's funny, I mean, with technology, with technology changing so quickly, I think it's easier and easier for us to want to look outside of ourselves to find answers and to find truth and to find things that we can put our weight on. My experience has shown me that getting quiet, yes, prayer, and looking in a few specific places for truth has served me very well. And so at the beginning of these what if questions, as you're mapping out all the possibilities in the world, I think it's really important to come up with the things that you believe and know to be true, and the things that you think might be true, assumptions you have, and then figure out what it would take for you to be convicted enough to take action. It doesn't have to be perfect, but as you look at sort of the what ifs, how do you get from a what if to yes, that's right. If we post this, people will come and lend. People will lend at 0% interest. Will anyone do that? People will care about the details of this goat herder in Uganda's story. People will not be afraid to use their credit card online, which actually was a big one way back then. It was like early days of PayPal and stuff, using your credit card. Whew, dangerous. So we had these handful of things, but really there were deeper truths that guided the initial sort of foundation of who we wanted to be as an organization. I remember one of the core values was about building partnership relationships, and inherent to that was this idea of empowerment. And I remember there were stories that I've come back to again and again and again that remind me of this and that continue to galvanize my belief in this particular value that Kiva was built all around. So early on, when I was, that picture with the turkey doing this internship, as I interviewed people, I started, I was early 20s, pretty cocky. I wish I was more humble, but I was really confident and really hopeful. And had you at that time given me a magic wand and said, Jessica, go out and make everything better, I would have grabbed that wand and I would have started zapping stuff because I thought I knew. One interview that happened, it was like 150 or so interviews in, was with a woman who was a charcoal seller. So she would make charcoal out of wood and then sell it at the market. And I remember as I asked her a little bit about her business, how the grant money had changed things for her. I wanted to know how her life had changed, how her standard of living had changed. And I remember the very first thing she said to me as I was asking these questions, and by the way, I confess, expecting answers, because at that point, I knew enough to be dangerous. I'd interviewed over 100 people and I got some answers that were like frequent flyer answers. So how's your life changed? Well, our family eats more protein. My daughters now go to school. Um, I bought mosquito nets. I bought us toothbrushes, like basics, right? And she said, oh, with the profits from my business, now I have sugar for my tea. Thank goodness I had been mentored and I had been guided before this journey to do two things. One, to just when there was a moment when I was just utterly hopelessly confused or had a judgment, to take a deep breath and just try to learn more and to ask why, asking why 5 times or millions of times, however many you need to. And so I said, interesting, why? So I knew that. And I knew if I kept asking, there would be a world in which this made sense to her and was a great choice. So assuming and going in with total respect and dignity, where every choice that person makes, there's a world in which it makes sense. Even if it doesn't to me, it makes sense and was a great choice in her world. I have to go in with that assumption. So I dug more, I asked more, and she ended up explaining to me that in East Africa, chai is a big deal culturally. It's served many times a day. And to do it right, you don't just like have tea and water, you have milk and you have sugar. It's part of the whole deal. And so she had not been able to afford sugar for a long time, which meant she hadn't served tea to guests in a long time. When she was able to afford anything, it wasn't toothbrushes, it wasn't mosquito nets, it was sugar, because that allowed her to be a hostess to others in her community. And so she would invite them in, serve them tea. And what ended up happening, she explained to me, not only was it a beautiful thing and a community builder, but it actually led to a real effect on her bottom line. She explained how charcoal is pretty, easy to come by. A lot of people were selling it in the market, but when she had reinvigorated those relationships with folks in her community, they chose her. So more people were coming to her and to talk to her to keep deepening the friendships. And so it actually led to business improving, but it also allowed her to finally lift her head up, be proud, and be a part, be engaged with her community in a way that she hadn't been able to afford to be for a long time. So that story for me was so humbling because it was indeed a choice that made sense. It was indeed a choice that mattered and was a really smart one for her. And even though I had initial questioning and judgment in my heart about it, it galvanized for me this value of always, 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 when in doubt, not grabbing that magic wand, but handing it off to the person you want to care for, that you want to help in the world, and always deferring to their worldview, their preferences, and their understanding, their strategy of how to make things better for themselves. So that was a core value that not only, has shown up across my own work generally, but it lived in Kiva's reality for a long time. The other little side note I wanted to say here, I had a sub point, which is it's not just about knowing what you believe, knowing what's true, and understanding how to test assumptions to get to places where you can put weight on what you think is going to happen or what you think is a truth, but it's prioritizing. And with a lot of social enterprises, if you just say you value all these 10 things, you can jump around and make very different decisions as a team on any given day because you value all of it. You value serving your customer really well. You value making sure you're paying what great prices and prioritizing fair trade, suppliers. You really care about. There's always a way to, jump to the next value, but prioritization of those values, like what comes first? Where will the trade-offs be? There may be trade-offs, not always. But when there are trade-offs, when there's a choice to be made, you got to know in it. I think it's helpful to know in advance and have conviction around prioritization of those values. All right, commitment. So when there is a world of possibility, certainly at the beginning, it narrows a little bit as you scale because you find product market fit, you see what's working. But I think in those early days and even later on, you have to at least commit for a segment of time to try out your theories of change, to try out these things you're committed, convinced and convicted around. And so for Kiva, speaking of mission, way in the early days, it lasted almost 20 years, this mission statement. It's a whole other sidebar on like what happens when you start a nonprofit and then you walk away and you kind of mic drop and then the world owns it. And it takes on a life of its own and it's a beautiful thing and it can be really tricky emotionally as well. But for a very long time, the mission was to connect people through lending to alleviate poverty. Today, I wrote it down. It's about expanding financial access to help communities thrive, which I think is great, but also maybe could be more specific. Those are my personal notes. But this mission guided us really well for a long time. So let's unpack it. It talks about who, right? It's about connecting people, individuals. This isn't a B2B play. This is individuals connecting to each other as directly as possible. through lending. It's a very specific kind of activity. It's not donations. It's not in interest-bearing investments, or that wasn't at the beginning, right? And to alleviate poverty at a very specific goal. It ends up there were secondary and tertiary effects of this connection and this activity. I think a huge impact of Kiva has been changing culture and hearts and minds, if you will, of a lot of lenders who might have had a story on repeat about the life of a borrower in a typical majority world situation. And being able to understand in a specific way a different story, a story of empowerment and strength and hard work, I think is a really big deal. But this has been the mission. And I remember, we committed to that mission for quite a long time. We dug in. And I remember 2 years in, we were invited to be on Oprah with President Clinton. He had written about Kiva in his book. And we had just crossed, if you heard me earlier, we had just crossed after 2 years the $10 million mark. So we had just cleared this amazing milestone of having facilitated loans for $10 million all around the world. It was so exciting. And I remember when we ended up going on the show. By the way, I hadn't owned a television. This is such a throwback. I remember I had to go to the local video store, like a Blockbuster-esque kind of deal, and rent Oprah DVDs and videos or whatever to watch because I'm like, I know I've heard of this lady. If I haven't seen it, I haven't seen that in a long time. So anyway, we're all wide-eyed and on the show. And I remember she asked how much we had raised. And we said $10 million. We answered that question on air, and it was such a big deal. Well, with so much traffic from that show that over the next week, our servers kept crashing. And we had to actually put up a splash page and say, help us buy new servers. We raised over 100,000 just that week to buy new servers. It was great. And then we were up and running again. But about a week and a half later, there was a call back when phones were shaped like this. And this was such early days. There were 7 of us in this little crumbling down office with bars on the windows in the Mission District of San Francisco. And everyone did everything still, kind of. But I answered the phone. I thought it was my mom. Who knew? I answered, and it was this gentleman who worked at a big, top 5 tech company and said, hey, love what you're doing with Kiva. Saw you on Oprah. Would love to put $10 million into your fund and then, invest it. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. It's not like a fund per se, it's individuals, and here's how it works. And I explained it. And he goes, oh, no, I don't have the time to pick people individually and lend 25 or 50 or $100. And I was like, well, that's understandable. You could donate it and pay our rent for ever. And you could do all these other things, but if you want to be engaged with that capital through Kiva, this is our mission. We connect individual human beings. Do you have clients or customers or others that you could divide this up and gift $100 to all of them? It would be such an impact. He didn't have the time for that either. And I get it. He had a mission as well, and he was focused on his unique mission. But on that same phone call, I was able to say, gosh, sounds really nice, but I don't think this is a fit for us. But how about, and I named 2 other organizations I thought would be a better fit. They were very thankful to me later. And I very much at peace hung up that phone because I had said no to something that would have taken us off mission. Had we taken that chunk of money and just auto lend it, he was very much against anything where it would be gifted to other individuals to decide where to go and to have to wait on that. He just wanted to dump it in and get it back and pat himself on his CSR back and move on and do something else. I think he was surprised to learn too that there was no interest on that. I thought he saw a great opportunity there, but there are a lot of other organizations could have provided him interest and did. But I said no to that because had we taken it, it would have blocked the thousands of people that were already lining up that had shut down our servers the week before, that had 25 and 50 bucks, they had 10 million ready to go. And they were individual humans that were going to come to the site, read stories about other human beings, be inspired by, connect with one of the stories or many of the stories, and then lend and have this experience over time of being paid back little by little and reading stories of change in those borrowers' lives. And so we said no to the 10 million from this one source, and we said yes to so many tens of millions of dollars, even over that next year from individuals. That was our mission, and that's how we were able to say yes and no to objectively great opportunities that came at us, certainly for the first few years as we scaled rapidly. Okay, third is connection. These last 2 are quickies, but as I learned from Dr. Yunus way back, and as I teach now to my students at USC, I teach a design thinking course, a human-centered design thinking course. It starts, it ends, everything is going to be back to and about your user. Who is the person you care about? Who is it that you want to serve? How do you listen as empathetically and in an open-minded way as possible? How do you make sure you don't lose touch and you're always in relationship in some way with those individuals. And then what do you do as an entity, as an organization to believe in? And so for the first few years, we were able to send every single employee, whether they were a customer service person, whether they were on the finance team, whether they did partnerships, whether they did, whether they're an engineer or product manager, every single employee, Kiva paid for a week where they could pick anywhere in the world that we worked and go spend time in the field with borrowers. Everyone was connected to the people that in the end were our priority to serve. Again, borrowers and lenders, yes, but in the end, we design around borrowers' needs first, or we did, and we do. I'm just using the royal we, which is why I corrected myself there. So building in ways for everybody to be deeply connected to the people that you want to serve in a regular way, because by the way, their worlds are going to change, their needs are going to change. The environment in which they live and operate is going to change. So this is not a one-time thing. It has to be ongoing and regular. Staying connected helps you, I believe, stay connected to what you're about, to the heart of your organization and who you've decided you're going to be in the world. So that's my second to last, and my very last one is just about culture. So this is an old team pick. I don't even know if I'm in there. I don't think I am, but it's a lot of folks and faces that I remember from about 10, 15 years ago. Kiva built into daily, weekly, monthly practices, pieces that continued to like double down on mission. We had the mission up on the wall. We had our values up on the wall. We would point to these, talk about these, bring them into decision making. The $10 million was just one example of this, but we would continue to visit these. At one point, you could ask anybody, stop them cold and say, what's Kiva's mission? And they would be able to say that. I think that was essential. First of all, it's incredibly motivating. People want to be part of the inner circle. They want to know how their day-to-day work connects to the mission and to the most essential pieces and parts of what the organization is about. But additionally, you look at sort of the rituals, the habits that you form as a team. At your weekly meetings, do you tell a story about failure and celebrate it? At all hands meetings, what do you do? Do you all read and answer some customer service emails together? Maybe you do that, right? Do you tell a story of a borrower or of a lender? There's so many things you can do to come back to the pieces that are the most important to you and to be this steady drip, this heartbeat of an expression of the things that you as an organization hold most dear. And those, I haven't been there full time for so long. Those live on if you bake these in the right way so that even when you move on as a founder, you create this beautiful thing that can keep going and keep expressing the things that you all held most dear from day one. I don't remember what other slide I have. That's my summary: conviction, commitment, connection, and culture. And what else did I put in here? I think the last thing I'll end with this. So entrepreneurship is such an adventure. And many of us as founders, I think there's always a reason that the world can tell us, that we can tell ourselves as we scale, why this next chapter, this next season, this next round is going to be harder. And maybe we're not the person to do it. We're not, experienced enough. We studied the wrong thing. We got a decision wrong 2 years ago and it's haunting us. Whatever it is, right? We always have voices that can tell us that we can't keep going. But the entrepreneurs that I've gotten to work with through Kiva and lots of other projects, and just the greatest entrepreneurs that I've met along the way in the last 25 years, they understand that entrepreneurship is about not letting those things stop us. This is a pretty academic definition. It's Howard Stevenson, a Harvard Business School professor's definition of entrepreneurship: the pursuit of opportunity without regard to resources currently controlled. I find it to be just so beautiful, so motivating, kind of romantic. Like you're running after something, you're pursuing this invisible thing, this opportunity, this thing that's in your imagination you want to make real in the world. You're pursuing that vision, that mission, without regard to the things that could come up and stop you. Whether it's you don't have all the resources you need today, what can you do anyway? What's a step forward you can take? Whatever the things are that stop you. I know I'm taking artistic liberty here. It's resources currently controlled, but I like to interpret that quite broadly. Great entrepreneurs keep pursuing the thing no matter what comes up. And so I want to encourage all of you in your own work, wherever you are at the beginning or well into scaling, think about, ask yourself, be honest with the pieces that make you feel afraid, that make you feel like you need to stop, and think about a way over and out, over, around, or through. There's always a step forward that you can take. The greatest entrepreneurs, whether they have very, very little or so much, understand this and operate in this way. And so that's what I'd like to leave you with. And oh, I have a book coming in October. I wrote a kid's book about giving, and it's fun. And I can share the information later with you if you want. But I'm going to stop sharing and take questions.
Jessica, I do want to say we only have 3 minutes until your cutoff. So would you?
You know,
we
I
don't-
can do I can do 5. I told my students I'd be like sliding right in there. So let's just go. We can talk fast.
Wonderful.
All right, great. Do you want to take Dennis off mute, Logan? We'll just let him ask. We don't have a lot of questions coming in, so we should be good.
I explained everything. Just kidding.
No, that was great. I think I speak for everyone when I say that was incredibly insightful and inspiring and encouraging.
Thank
Dennis,
you.
go ahead.
This was so good, Jessica. I'm so glad that we get to meet you and hear about the
Thank you.
founder of Kiva. I've been a fan for years. My question is, as a business, is it worth it to try to be a B Corp? Or is it better to just have a full for-profit, normal, but choose the right investors that have your same heart? So the access to capital is clear, but
Yeah.
the heart is built in.
When you're smaller, you can get by with just choosing the right investors. If things really start taking off, pursuing that B Corp certification are their guardrails and it's protection for you. It's a way to protect your mission. So I think it can be worth it. I don't have a hard and fast rule as to when it's worth pursuing that formally, but as you have more public investors, a broader set of investors, you do need, you're going to be beholden to your fiduciary duties to maximize value for shareholders. And so to make other choices, if and when you need to prioritize certain values over others, it protects you. I've seen companies survive and do very, very well for the first, rounds of funding or first decade or so before they even pursue it. So my short answer is yes, but not right away. Yeah. By the way, I know we can keep going. I just want to say, please feel free to pass along. My email is just Jessica Jackley. Actually, I'll give you my work one. It's just jjackley@usc.edu. If anyone has questions that I'm not able to answer here, I really appreciate that you all joined on, and I'm happy to follow up as I can. There you go. Thanks, Ryan.
Or they can enroll at USC, right?
You can. Actually, for real, there's a Master's of Social Entrepreneurship. It's one of a kind. It's one of the reasons I said yes to this role. And I have at least the full class of MSSE students twice. So they see a lot of me, but it's an incredible program. So I actually highly recommend it.
Well, thank you so much for that. In light of you giving your email and welcoming anyone to ask questions, I want to honor your time and get you to class on time. So I want to thank you so much for spending time with us. This was incredible, and I think everyone would agree. And I want to thank everyone else for taking time, mentors, mentees, partners, friends. If you want to get in touch with us, our mission statement is mentoring entrepreneurs to multiply their impact. If you want to be mentored or mentor, please get in touch with us. And Ryan, anything else before we shut down?
I just thought Ray put a great question there. Jessica, you've given to us. I can't wait to read your book with my kids.
Thank you. It's fun.
Yeah, and make some more loans with them, which is always so fun to do. Turning down the 10 million, growing your team. These are all such insightful things. Ray asked a great question. How can we support you?
Oh man, that's so nice. Thank you, Ray. Thank you all. It's funny. I feel like this might be a God thing, so I'm going to be bold and just say it. Yesterday, I wound down a consulting project. And so one of the reasons I took this job and I'm so happy to be here is that I do get some wiggle room. And so I have other projects brewing, but I also have space. So I've done a little bit of coaching recently. I definitely advise. So I have it. I'm just saying I haven't have a little window that may have opened. So if it's kind of back at you, if I can be of a support to you all, please do reach out. It doesn't just have to be a question. If there's ways that I can dig in with you, in discreet ways, I'm happy to try. So I don't know, just thank you for your time, and thanks for hearing what I have to say, and communicate. Let's just be in touch. Let's be in community.
Thank you so much, Jessica. I'm so glad you boldly said that. And since we have some time here and you said your class we were going to be late, I'm just going to take advantage. We have you on the line here. So I'm going to ask,
Yeah.
what did you do when people told you it wouldn't work?
Oh, that's tricky, right? The feedback question. Like what feedback is the stuff you listen to and what isn't? I think all feedback is great because you can dig in and ask more. So it's not going to work was always a question that followed with, well, tell me more. Why? How? Where's the problem? What's the problem that you see? One biggie was, well, no one's going to be motivated to do this weird 0% loan. It's not a tax deductible donation. And it's also not an interest bearing investment. There's no financial upside. Yeah, at $25, I don't know about you, but for a while I would like go to Goodwill and give away a bag of sweaters and save my little receipt for like $30. It never really made a difference on my taxes, and that really wasn't the motivation. So I think peeling back assumptions around like, well, are people motivated at $25? Do they really care about making $26 3 years later? Or do they care about a positive interaction that's kind of like a donation that, yeah, it's not tax deductible, but I know lenders that over 20 years have loaned thousands of dollars because they started with $50 and just keep lending it. So yeah, I think ask more for their justification, their thinking. It's not bad, it's not scary. You can learn and you can get better.
I like that a lot because it represents a belief in what you're doing, but also a willingness to be open and take the risk of asking a question and not just immediately going to the defense of why it will work, but
Oh,
being
yeah.
willing to learn. Like, tell me more. Why do you think it
Oh,
won't work? Help me learn,
always. You know what? I should
along
have
the
had
way.
curiosity. That would be another good C,
Yes.
but
Oh,
truly, like always
curiosity.
having the reaction of curiosity, even when you might feel a little bit offended or like threatened or surprised or whatever. Yeah, a little tiny bit of curiosity can go a long way in those moments.
Well, thank you so much for that. I think that's curiosity is a great place to end. My amazing wife always tells me that when you're stressed out, be curious. Your
Yeah.
brain can't be stressed and curious at the same time. So if you need a
Amen.
moment of stress relief, go be curious about something. So we'll
I
end
love
on that. I hope your students today learn as much as we did. I'm so thankful for your time, your heart,
Thank
your
you.
vision. It has inspired so many on this call, not only today, but previous to now and going forward. We just pray blessing over you and thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you, everyone on this call, for the
Thank
work that you're doing
you.
around the globe to transform lives. So many of you are partners and friends. And just thank you for your time and your investment in Ardent and in so many other kingdom ventures like Kiva and Untapped Capital and others. And definitely take advantage of Jessica's offer to coach and to work with you. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for your time. God bless. Have a great class,
Thank
Jessica.
you.